everyone, and welcome to another edition of Connecting with Kim. We're so happy that you joined us today on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network. I'm your host, Kim Droege. You can also find the audio of our show on Sun Radio 96.3 FM in Sun City Center and on your favorite streaming platform. I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, the Spring of Tampa Bay, for my clothing from the Spring Boutique. So everything that you see I'm wearing came from their boutique on Swann and Henderson. If you want to know the specifics, you can go to my Facebook page and my Instagram account, Connecting with Kim, and I'll give you the specifics on the wardrobe. But I want to thank them very much. They do great work helping survivors of domestic violence. So this is going to be a very special edition of Connecting with Kim today for me. My guest in the chair, I'm going to put on my glasses, as I always do. She was the president. She's a legend, number one. That's the first thing. Number two, she was the president of the Sun City Center Republican Club for 25 years, and it was the largest Republican club in the United States, okay, with 1,000 members. She's been a force in Republican politics from the local level all the way up to the federal level. She's been an invitee for several inaugurations in her lifetime. And she is the 2019 recipient of the Tiger Bay Club's Lifetime Achievement Award. And more importantly than any of those things that I've outlined for you, she's my mother. So I would like to introduce you to my mom, Dee Williams. Welcome, Mom.
Thanks.
Isn't this great? We get to be together. You okay? You're all right, right? Good, good. Don't make me cry, because then my makeup will run and Jessica will be mad at me. So, and it'll be a mess on trying to clean it up on the tape. So anyway, Mom, as you know from watching my show, because she's been in the studio with me several times watching tapings, you know that I always start out the top of the show with allowing my guests to talk about their life journey. So why don't you just start wherever you feel like, because this whole 27 minutes of taping is devoted to you. So we're going to talk about your life journey.
Well, my life began on a farm. I spent the first 15 years of my life on a farm. At the time, I thought I hated a farm and couldn't wait to get off of it, but I found out later in life that was probably the best training I ever had that prepared me for my journey through life. But I learned hard work, and I learned how to take care of myself. I formed a love of animals because I dealt with them all the time. And then at the end of the 15 years, I migrated to a city, Indianapolis, where I had family there, and they're involved in war work because we were still in World War II. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, my grandmother went to work at 63 years old and earned her Social Security during those years.
That's amazing. Okay.
Yeah, she worked and did that, but she felt like she wanted to return to the farm, but I did not. I went to Indianapolis as a sophomore in high school, and I finished high school there, and I chose not to go to college. When I had a job when I left high school. I worked at that job for 5 years. And then I joined the Western Electric, Western Electric, which was the manufacturing unit of AT&T, and gave them 34 years of service.
So you were raised in southeastern Missouri.
Right, near the Mississippi River.
Near the Mississippi River. And I remember when I was a kid growing up, we would take trips down there to visit family, because you still had family in the area.
Still do.
Yeah, and my great-grandmother, who you were raised by, and your great-grandpa, well, your grandpa, my great-grandfather, he was a tremendous influence in your life, wasn't he?
Yes, he was, because he knew that I hated the farm, because I said when I'm old enough or to be of adult age, I was going to shake the dust off the farm and never look back. And he said, the only way you'll ever get out off this farm, honey, is with education, because whatever you put in your head, no one can take away. And even though my grandmother sort of didn't take too much interest in what I had planned for my life, my grandfather encouraged me all the way.
I know. It always seems like there's somebody in our lifetime, in our journey, that always wields a tremendous influence on us. For me, I know it's you, and for you, it was your grandfather.
My grandfather.
He was your grandfather got to spend a lot of time with you because he was legally blind, correct?
Yeah, he was legally blind.
So although he worked on the farm and helped out, he was somewhat limited.
Yeah, he was somewhat limited, and when I got old enough, I was a seeing eye dog.
Mm-hmm.
but he knew his way around the farm. He might have been blind, but he was a smart man.
Oh yeah, and he was. Where was Where was your grandpa from? My great grandfather. Where was he from?
He was from southeastern Missouri, right there where we were.
Okay, so he wasn't an immigrant. He wasn't.
No. In those days, and families weren't they wasn't over 5 or 6 miles apart.
Right.
He was an overseer for farmland, for a doctor who owned a lot of farmland before he went blind.
Well, and we should share that your family was sharecroppers.
Yep.
And if you don't know what a sharecropper is, and I can assure you that in the farming world, sharecropper is probably the lowest of the farming world. I mean, and explain what a sharecropper is, Mom.
Well, they rent they rent land and farm it for the owner of the land, and he takes half of it. And the only job worse than being a sharecropper is a coal miner.
No offense to the coal miners out there.
No offense to the coal miners, but it was kind of like the Ernie Ford song, "You never got out of debt." And I've had my uncles go rent a farm, and they would clear the land to get it farmable and get it producing, and then somebody would come along and rent it out from under you. So we were always moving.
Yeah.
That was one thing that always irritated me, was always moving.
Yeah, you wanted to put down roots.
I wanted to put
so
down
you
roots.
came to Indianapolis, and you graduated high school with honors. You were a smart girl.
I did. I won a scholarship to college, which I never took advantage of it.
Well, you know, sometimes at points in our life, a door opens, but sometimes there has to be somebody to help us understand how to step through.
Well, my family weren't very well educated. And I was the first one in my family to graduate from high school. They weren't dumb people, but they didn't have a lot of schooling, and I had this scholarship, and I really didn't know what I had, and I didn't have anyone to explain what I had, so I passed it up. But I never stopped going to school. I mean, I never stopped learning.
No, you've been an avid, well, as growing up, I remember you being an avid reader.
Yeah.
You were always, my mother was always in perpetual motion. I mean, really, honestly. I mean, she was not one to sit down and just loaf, you know. She was either, you were either, well, you worked. I grew up in a time when, mothers did not work. They stayed home. My mother was a working mother, so that was very unusual amongst my circle of friends, right? Mm-hmm. So we had the weekends together, but you were always busy, as I recall.
Yeah, I continued to go like I said, I worked, and I continued to go to school, and I got interested I was always, as a kid, fascinated with beauty shops.
Who doesn't like playing beauty salon?
So I got it. A friend of mine I was riding to work with, she says, "I'm enrolled in beauty school." I said, "Oh, when and where?" And I said, "I'm going to enroll too." I did. It took me several years to get my license, but I did. I never intended to work at it, but I got my license.
Well, and you used to take me with you
Yeah.
to beauty school when you would go on Saturdays, right? We'd go to beauty school. And it was so much fun for a little kid like me because they would let me run around and do basically whatever I wanted in the school. You know, I could play with the hair products, and I could, talk to people that were getting, because they also worked on people at the beauty school.
Oh, yeah. That's where we got our training. I think they gave you a job of gathering up hairbrushes and shampoo bottles.
I was so happy. I remember very fondly going to beauty school with you. So you came to Indianapolis, and so tell me how you met my daddy.
Well, I rented an apartment, and it had an upstairs apartment, which was an attic apartment, and a girl rented that apartment, and he came looking for her one day because they both were raised in the same area of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And he came looking for her, and she wasn't home, so my husband and I just invited him to sit down in our apartment till she came home. So things developed, and I might as well be truthful about it. I finally, not because of him, but I got a divorce, and the two of them chummed around all the time going to ball games, and I'm not a sports fan. But one day they talked me into going with them. So what are you going to do besides sit around here and watch TV? So I started chumming around with them, and things just kept progressing till we fell in love.
Well, when I remember a story my daddy used to tell me, and I have pictures, and I'm going to try to include that as part of this interview, but my mother always was very slim, very trim, and she had long, dark, curly hair. And I remember my father telling me on many occasions, and she tanned. My mother always was tanned very dark. And please don't be offended because I know this is not a word we use now, but it was okay then. My father said that when he met you, he thought you were a gypsy because of the way you were dressed, your long, dark, curly hair, how dark you were, and he always talked about that. And I have a picture of you at that time when you had that long, dark, curly hair.
Well, when I bought my first bedroom set and applied for credit, when they called, I worked at the Moose Lodge at the time, called to see if I, verify my employment, and they said, "Is she Mexican?"
So you look Latina. You look like a Latina. Yeah, that's probably the best way we can put it.
Well, they didn't know the word then, but
they didn't. Yeah, we didn't. I mean, again, please don't be offended, but this is the terminology back then that was used, and we know better now. But you looked very Latin.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I did.
You do, and I can see that from the pictures.
Well,
so,
we're working on a farm. You had a perpetual tan.
Yeah. So you got married to Daddy, and you were both now working at Western Electric, right?
Well, we weren't when we first got married. I was at Western Electric 3 years before he was, because I'd gone there years before we met, really. Mm-hmm. And so he came to work, about 6 months or so after we got married, he came to work there too. They were putting in a new department, and he got hired into the new department.
Good. And then you had me. This little bundle of joy dropped in your life, right?
Yeah, right. No planning, but there you were.
Although I do remember that I was born in December, folks, and if you back up 9 months, that's March, and your anniversary is in March. So I think maybe there was a little planning going on there.
No, it wasn't.
You were celebrating.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, we lived in Indianapolis, and then we moved out of Indianapolis. I went to high school in Greenwood, Indiana, and then I got married and left home at a relatively young age. And so, tell me, what got you interested in politics?
Well, I was already interested in politics in Indianapolis, and I started with school boards.
Yeah.
And then we got involved in city politics when we moved to Greenwood, and my husband wound up serving on the city council. Mm-hmm. And then he managed a campaign for a guy that got elected mayor and became a part of his board of works, which is sort of deputy mayors when you get right down to it. And that's how we got involved and stayed involved.
And that mayor happened to be one of my high school teachers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you got involved in politics. Now, my mother always says to this day, folks, people come to her all the time and say, well, I want to get involved. Where can I get involved? And my mother always tells them the same thing. Start at the school board, because many a mischief, number one, and many a political career is born at the school board.
That's
right, Mom?
That's right.
Yeah. And we've seen that in our own local,
in
our own local Hillsborough County. Okay, so I've left home. You're in Greenwood. You guys are living your empty nester life, and you're getting more involved in politics. And then one day, I get a call. I'm living in Belgium, in Europe at the time, and I get this call, and it's my parents, and they said, "You better sit down." And I was like, "Okay." And you said, "We're moving to Florida." And you could have knocked me over with a feather when you said that, because Daddy always said, "I'm not moving to Florida." If you're just joining me on Connecting with Kim, we're going to pick up on this story, but the guest in the chair today is my mother, a legend in Hillsborough County. So you moved to Florida, to Sun City Center. Mm-hmm. Yeah?
Yeah, I kind of got roped into that because I was doing some part-time work even after I retired. And one day he says, "Would you send this place $100?" And I said, "What for?" "Well, we're going to go to Florida, and I'm going to spend a week playing golf." And I said, "Well, is it on a beach?" "No." I said, "Well, I don't play golf, so what am I doing?"
Because if there's a beach involved, I'm there.
Yeah. And he said, "Well, you can lounge around the pool and read and knit because that's all you ever do when we're on the beach." But he didn't tell me there was a house tour involved, because if he had, I wouldn't have left the city limits of Greenwood. So we get here and we scheduled the tour. They said, when do you want to schedule it? I said, as soon as we can. Might as well get this behind us.
Get this over with.
Get this over with.
So I can go on doing what I want to do.
Yeah. So then we got this over with, and while he's playing golf, I'm house hunting because I fell in love with the place. So on Thursday morning, he said, I'll be finished with golf in the morning, so or this afternoon. So in the morning, what do you got planned? I said, I got 4 houses for you to look at. That's what I have planned. So he went along to humor me. And the last house we looked at was the one he liked. He said, if I buy one, it'll be this one, and I want furniture and all. It all worked out. We left, and we both had both of us went to real estate school after Kim went to college.
Yeah.
And because I was in a social circle that was all realtors, and I didn't know how to talk to them. So I decided,
So he said, what the heck, I'll go to realtor school.
let's go to real estate school so I can talk to you people. So
And you sold some houses and stuff, too, as I recall.
I sold some houses and stuff. We both did, because he decided to go, too. And so then we left. When we left, we told the people, well, we're not going to buy your house till we sell our house, and we're not going back to Indianapolis until the 1st of March. But if you get a chance to sell it, give us a chance to, before you make up your mind.
First right of refusal, right?
Yeah, first right of refusal. So we went back home and put our house on the market the 1st of March and sold it on April the 1st, a month later, at the asking price. Sold our furniture by the room.
Like rooms to go, but a modern version of
we really originated rooms to go.
You originated rooms to go.
Because they were just getting started in Florida when we moved here. Rooms to go was.
Yeah.
They
weren't something.
No.
No.
So then we got moved in down here, and I was going to retire from everything, politics and all. I was going to have the prettiest yard in Sun City Center and the cleanest house. None of that ever happened. I did have a pretty yard.
You do have a
I did have a pretty yard.
because we just sold Mom's house, Mom and Dad's house, from when they moved down here 33 years ago to Sun City Center, and we just sold it and closed on it. And some other happy owner now has that beautiful property. But you did have a beautiful yard, lots of flowering things.
Yeah, because that was the farmer in me.
Yeah,
I never lost the farming in me.
So tell them, let's talk about the story of, before we talk about politics, talk about the story of your neighbor Janet Wilson coming over to welcome you to the neighborhood.
Yeah, she lived across the street. The second day she come over and handed me a little piece of, about a half sheet of paper with names on it. And she said, you might want to familiarize yourself with these names. I said, why? And she said, they're the good golfers. I said, I never hit a golf ball in my life, and I don't intend to start now. So then she wanted to know if I played bridge. I said, I wouldn't sit still that long for all the tea in China. Now, what is your next question? She said, what are you going to do, and what in the name of God are you going to do here in Sun City Center to keep from dying of boredom? And I said, well, from everything I've seen in here that I'd like to dabble with, maybe a year at a time, I don't have that long to live.
Because Sun City Center is known, the development down there, including Kings Point, is known for the amount of clubs we have. I mean, if you have an interest, we have a club. And you can, everything you've gone through your whole life saying, I want to do that, and I want to learn how to do that, and you can do it,
yeah,
right?
You can.
And that's still the case today.
And if you like to do something that isn't there, you can start your own club, and they'll get it going. I don't know how many new clubs have started since I've lived here.
Oh gosh, a lot, right? Because I was your first visitor. You moved, and I was your first visitor in May. I'll never forget that. Yep, came down in May, first visitor. Yeah, I always loved your house. So tell me how you got started in local politics here, Hillsborough County politics.
Well, let's see. We moved in on May the 30th, 1989, and I went to a Republican club in January of '90, which was their annual club and installation of officers. And there was this young man there from Apollo Beach, Florida, that announced he was going to run to become a state representative against a 10-year incumbent. And he was going to win, and he was going to knock on every door in Sun City Center. And I was so enamored with him. I said, he's going to knock on every door in the district. And I was so enamored of him. I said, there's no way that you can do that. But I said, I'm going to help you. So I'll take Sun City Center and knock on every door I can get to. If I can't answer a question, I'll write down the name and address, and you can go back and take care of it.
And who was this young man?
Chris Core from Apollo Beach.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, his family developed Apollo Beach. And I did. I kept my promise. I did what I said I would, and he won the election. He won every precinct, even the incumbent's precinct.
Oh my gosh, so that's a huge accomplishment.
Yes, it was.
And so you realized, I could do this.
Yeah. And my husband said, I thought we were going to get out of politics. I said, well, I thought we were too. Maybe you are, but I'm not.
But as usual,
But then,
just drag Daddy along with you, right?
yeah, then when they start, next year when they were selecting a slate of officers for the Republican Club, they wanted me to come on as first vice president. And I said, I don't want to do that. I want to be a membership chairman because I want to get acquainted with people. Well, you can do that too. So I agreed to do it. And I had no sooner been installed as an officer till the president found out he had cancer of the liver. He never conducted a meeting.
Oh.
So I took over as, not as president, but I took over having the meetings. And then the following year I took over as president. And because I appreciated him so, I asked him to go on the slate as my vice president. But then he passed away 6 months later. So,
Oh.
And then every year when we put up a slate of officers, nobody wanted it, so I just kept doing it for 25 years.
Well, they weren't going to mess with success. I mean, so you have to understand, folks, at this time when my parents moved to Florida and to Hillsborough County, you have to understand that at that time, well, Florida was blue.
Yeah, very
And
blue.
Hillsborough County was blue.
Navy
And-
blue. Navy blue.
Oh, dark, the bluest you can get, right? And so one by one,
We took over the county commission.
this lady, with the help of other people who had a dream and a vision, started turning Hillsborough County blue. I mean, red. Sorry, Hillsborough County red from blue. The commission, the county constitutionals, everything.
We got all the constitutionals, but one.
But one.
Public defender.
Public defender, our friend Julie Holt.
Julie
Julianne Holt.
No.
Yeah, she was great.
loved-
They never wanted to put anybody against her because they knew they couldn't
No,
bear.
we never.
No.
We didn't even try to get that office.
Yeah, yeah. So you had a good time, and you, I mean, just, you might want to share some names of some people that you have definitely helped them get elected. I know Tom Lee, because I remember coming down for Tom Lee's campaign.
Yeah, well, I helped Senator Beard before that keep his office because we set out to unseat him too over redistricting. And Chris Core was the challenger. But then we hit into a recession where their development situation where they owed more than things reversed, and he had to drop out of running for the office. And he had it nailed down at that point. So then Senator Beard said, "You got to help me keep this office." So I did. And then he retired at the end of that term, and that's when Tom Lee ran. And then I've helped a lot of judges get elected.
Oh yeah, there's probably not a judge sitting on Hillsborough County Circuit Court or County Court that you haven't been involved with.
Not very many.
Not very many. And let's see, you were with Adam Putnam from the
Adam
time he
Putnam,
started,
yeah,
right?
and Dennis Ross.
Dennis Ross, I remember that.
And Dan Miller.
Dan Miller.
Dan Miller. When that was redistricting again, and Dan from Sarasota, or no, Bradenton, was our congressman, so I worked with him and for him. Served on a lot of his committees.
And that's another thing we should talk about, because you really have, because we're running out of time, and I feel like I haven't covered enough ground. You've served on a lot of different commissions and committees, too, so why don't you share some of those that you've served on?
Well, I served on the Florida Commission for the Status of Women for 10 years. You're supposed to be term limited out at 8, but you stay till your replacement is appointed. And Senator Rubio was new, and he didn't get around to that for a while, so I kept on it till he. And then I've served on the constitutional laws and the commission. I've served on a lot of committees for them. As a matter of fact, I probably can't even remember all of them.
Well, I know you've served on the Good Government Award, the E.G. Simmons, which I'm happy to say I was asked by Stacy White to serve on. this past year, and past 2 years, and I really enjoyed that. I've really had a good time with that, and I hope I can continue.
And I served on some committees during Al Higginbotham's term. And one was with Terry Castro, and I hate to admit it, I forgot the name of it.
But it's okay because we just ran into Terry Castro a couple days ago, and we were spending some time reminiscing, right?
Yeah, right.
And you've been invited to several presidential inaugurations.
Yeah, I was invited to. Well, I worked real hard on the George
H.W. Bush.
H.W. Bush. I worked a lot of fundraisers for him and Dan Quayle, and I was invited to that inauguration. And then let's see. Then George W. Bush. Matter of fact, I had him here and I hosted him in Sun City Center twice. And I was invited to everything there that year, and again, I just gave my tickets away to whoever was looking for them.
I know. Can you believe that? My mother gave inauguration tickets away. I mean, but your people kill for those. It's like a reward.
I always tell them, all you have to do is bring me a souvenir, but don't let it be a coffee mug.
Yeah. Although, folks, I will tell you, when I got the coffee mugs for Connecting with Kim, my mother said to me, because she's never liked drinking out of a coffee mug. She always wants a coffee cup, right? And she looked at my mug and she said, well, this might be the first time I actually drink out of a coffee mug because these are pretty.
Yeah, they are pretty.
So, Mom, you and Daddy were a great team together. My daddy left us in 2011, but you were a great team politically. Daddy, I think this is probably a good classification. Daddy was the strategist. He was street smart. He was a great political strategist. He strategized, and you made it happen on the ground. You were the person who actually made whatever the strategy was come to life.
Well, I always said, you've got to figure it out, and I'll do the grunt work. I never was good at crunching numbers, and I wasn't good at strategy. I didn't like making phone calls. I liked to go face to face. And I always said, you work out the plan, and then I'll do it.
And we've had a lot of good times together. As I've walked the precincts with my mother, handing out campaign material, knocking on doors. So, Mom, we're just about out of time. Is there anything? Is there any final thing you want to say or lesson you want to leave us with from this wonderful life that you've had?
Well, you just have to decide what you want to do and then do it. And don't do anything you don't enjoy doing. It's just like with politics. There's lots of things to do in politics, but capitalize on your strong point. Don't take on a responsibility that you can't put your heart into it.
Exactly. Because if your heart's not in it,
your heart's not in it, you will not do a good job. And during these years, I've been asked to do things, and I say no. I cannot do a good job, and I'm not going to do it.
And that's another thing to keep in mind, right, Mom? No is a complete sentence.
That's right.
Most people don't understand that, but no is a complete sentence.
I used to have this friend when she'd say no to her husband, and he'd argue with her. She said, "What part of no did you not understand, N or O?"
Well, we're out of time, Mom. I want to thank you for being my guest today on Connecting with Kim. It's been a very special time for me.
Thank you for inviting me to be your guest.
Oh, well, there was no question you were going to be my guest. It's my show, so. So, my guest in the chair today has been my mother, Dee Williams, who is a legend in Hillsborough County Republican politics, not only at a local level, but all the way up to the top. She's had security clearance. I mean, she's been everywhere and done everything. And I'm so glad to have spent this time talking to you today, Mom. Come back next week when we'll have another edition of Connecting with Kim, and a final shout out to my sponsor, the Spring of Tampa Bay, for supplying my clothing from the Spring Boutique at the corner of Swann and Henderson. And if you haven't frequented their thrift store or the boutique, please go, because all the net proceeds from the two stores support their mission of sanctuary and services for survivors of domestic violence. And they've done a great job since 1977. They are a leader. So thank you again. Thank you again, Mom, and come back next week for another edition of Connecting with Kim. So long. Farewell.